Hello everyone, it's Melanie here with Vintage Hill Studio. I'm so happy you dropped by. I have a repurpose project today and a watercolor project, and it's making this special little bookmark. Now this is from a repurposed book that was probably headed for the trash. You can see the bindings coming apart, but what a treasure. I'm using a watercolor palette and a cling stamp set from Dollar Tree. Both are great products. I'll show you how that works in a minute. So here is that nice little book. This is a Reader's Digest book with lots of little stories in it. It's got some beautiful photos in here that would also make great bookmarks. And the pages are in pretty good shape. Just the overall book needs to be repurposed. So I'm going to choose a page here and get started. This is the Caterpillar Pro paper cutter. This is my go-to cutter. It's a self-sharpening paper cutter, so every time I move this wheel back and forth, it's sharpening the blade. Win-win, right? And it also has this handy little light strip that you can turn on, and you can see as I move my book page across, I can see directly through the page from the light. That helps with very precise cuts. So I'm just picking some of the wording that I liked here, and I'm cutting these down to 2 inches by 6 inches. Now I can get 2 bookmarks off of one single page. Next I'll move on to my stamping. Now I like to use my Mini Misty stamping platform because I've never used these stamps before and I wasn't sure what kind of an image I would get from a Dollar Tree stamp, but I'm here to tell you these are as quality of a stamp as anything else you can find in clear cling stamps. So I'll bring over my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I like using this for detailed stamps. And you can see on my very first try here with this flower, I get a very nicely stamped image. So, very pleased with the stamps from Dollar Tree. And then again, look at that color palette on the left there of my watercolors. I mean, there's different variations of each shade. I was just really excited to find that at Dollar Tree, so I'm going to give that a try for the first time today as well. Okay, I'm going to give this butterfly a little extra stamping here because I want him to have very stark black. And there are my stamped images. Ready to move forward with the watercoloring. So I'll bring over that watercolor palette. You can see there are those beautiful colors, and I'm going to take a little dropper and just add some water droplets to quite a few colors. I wasn't sure what colors I was going to use on this project, so I'm just picking several colors that appealed to me, and I will move on from there. Gonna let those sit for just a second, and then I'll take the brush that is part of that watercolor set. It's just a little scruffy brush, and I will start moving that paint around in each cake. Now I'm using the water droplets that I applied to each one and just activating the watercolor cakes. After I get through activating those, I'm going to go back to my little cup of water and completely rinse out my brush. Now I'm not going to clean the water in between each color that I use here. I'm just cleaning my brush off so that I don't cross-contaminate between my colors. You can also use those little clear wells over to the left of the watercolor palette here for mixing colors or moving some of your wet colors into those wells if you want. I'm just working directly from the cakes today. Now I went to a finer watercolor brush here, and I'm going to just very gingerly add a little bit of water to my flower and do a wet on wet watercolor technique. That is that I wet my book page just a bit on the stamped image, and then I go back and forth with my fine watercolor brush and add a little bit of paint from the watercolor cake, a little bit more water, dab it off my paper towel, and go back and forth like this. I want a very translucent effect. Now you can see I've moved on to the little darker purple here for some shading. But again, I want to make sure that I can read the words through my watercolor, which will bring forward the use of this repurposed book page. Now here in the green, I didn't water that down enough. I got a little intense color there on my first leaf, so I will go back with my paper towel and dab that off just a bit. If it doesn't come off, I add a little water and dab that up. Alright, so that fixed that little boo-boo. Now moving on to my butterfly. I'm going to wet her wings here, trying to stay away from my black stamped part of my image because I don't really want to watercolor over the black. I just want to stay within the lines as if, you know, working from a coloring book. So I'll get my orange put down, and then I'm going to come back with that little deeper orange later and add some shading closer to her body, closer to the inside part of those wings. But again, keeping it very light-handed. And I will have a close-up look on this later so that you can definitely see the writing through the watercolor. I just really like that effect. I mean, the whole purpose here is reusing these old book pages. And I love to read books where you can still turn the pages. So this is really meaningful for me. And it's also meaningful for a lot of my friends who love to read as well. So this is very addicting. I mean, you can come up with all kinds of ideas for reusing these book pages. And I love this one the best. So there's a close-up look on my flower and my butterfly, and then I'll bring a little wider watercolor brush here and start working in two colors. I chose to use that light blue, and it looks fairly stark on my paper towel, but it will dry back lighter. And I'm just going to go back and forth and wet my little book page here and add a little bit of this color in the blue and a little bit in that lilac color as well. Just keeping it very simple, two colors. Trying not to overdo it here, but at the same time adding a little more character to this bookmark. Alright, the sky's the limit on what you can do here. You could use ephemera. I have another video on how I did use ephemera on a book page. The watercolor was a lot of fun. I've also done some embossing folders and then inked over that. Just play around with it. You can see, I mean, there's a plethora of book pages just ready for some type of artwork. So get my background done here, trying not to muddy it up since I am working wet on wet. Trying to keep my colors fairly clear of each other. Okay, now I'm ready to move on here and add my sentiment to the front of this bookmark. Again, this is from that same stamp set from Dollar Tree, and it says, "Enjoy the little things." And if you use the packaging to lay over whatever you're working on, you can kind of see what it's going to look like before you stamp it. So again, I'll be using the VersaFine Onyx black ink. That will stand out very nicely against this printed book page. And I want to make sure that that is a really crisp and dark image, so I stamp it a couple of times. And that finishes off the front of my bookmark. Now to back it, I just use a little 2 1/4 by 6 1/4 inch mat. I'll get that adhered down. I like to use liquid adhesive so I can move it around until I've got it straight. And then I'll come back with my brayer and make sure that liquid adhesive is fully dispersed beneath my bookmark. I'll come back and add a little dot, and I'll bring over my hole punch and quickly punch a hole in the center for my ribbon at the top of my bookmark. And then as a finishing touch, I thought it would be nice to bring over this We Are Memory Keepers reinforcement punch, and I do 2 of these, one for the front and one for the back, just to bring that gray color to the front and also to add a little more stability to the hole. So I'll get that put down with some liquid adhesive, flip this over on the other side. You can see I've finished off the back of my bookmark with a little note about this being out of a Reader's Digest book. And that completes my bookmark. The only thing I want to do is laminate this, which I did off camera with my Scotch laminator and thermal laminating sheets. I like to do that for durability, and it also protects the watercolor. If you'd like to see how that's done, visit my Vintage Hill Studio YouTube channel for other bookmarks that I've done videos on, and I'll show you how the laminating process works. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I hope you get inspired to look around on any items you have on hand that might be repurposed for other things. I'd love to hear comments from you or have you subscribe. Hit that notification bell and you'll be notified the next time I post a video. Happy crafting, everyone!